Well, good evening, everyone. We want to welcome you to tonight's school board meeting. We have a capacity crowd here. We're grateful for that. Generally, we don't get that unless we've done something wrong. But tonight, we have some very special guests here. So we would like to begin. I guess I'll call the meeting to order. And then we'll begin with our flag salute and our special guests with Principal Castrillon from Captain Gray Elementary School.
Good evening, President Christian, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. This evening, Ms. Miller and I are proud to showcase one of the many great programs that we offer here in Pasco. So tonight we have Ms. Jamie Chavez, the teacher of our preschool autism class at Captain Gray. So she and her amazing paraprofessionals have worked all school year with our students in practicing the Pledge of Allegiance, or the flag salute. Her classified staff could not be here tonight, but they include Jessica Simpson, Lori Cox, Christy Curtis, and Fatima Herrera. We think it's critical to notice the work that they put in with these students. And the program has two sessions, one morning session, one afternoon session, and all the students go to school 5 days a week. Each session is with 8 students and 5 adults. Under the guidance of Ms. Chavez and our wonderful support staff, all of the students in our program have made amazing growth throughout the year. So we're extremely proud, and they're excited. They practice it every single morning and afternoon. So you'll hear the ending where they say, "Go Sharks." So they follow the whole routine. So, part of this program, decades of research from Harvard University shows that children with early experiences play a critical in the brain development. So this is one of the programs that's near and dear to my heart. So I decided to bring him here this evening. So I would love to acknowledge the parents of these hardworking students. So parents, if you could please stand so we can give you a nice round of applause. And without further ado, please let me introduce our students to you, leading the Pledge of Allegiance. So starting off with Mr. Enzo Almaguer, Lucas Gilbert, Cesar Ochoa, Brian Menjivar, David Valencia, Matthew Sainz, Braden Kopp, Alex Palacios, and Norman Arnold. So, ready, boys? Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's see. Okay, one. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go. Picture.
Yes, they are. So you can imagine how much fun it would be working with those students. Mr. Castrillon, thank you for coming. Thank you for bringing these special students with you tonight and sharing them with us. Thank you, parents and family members, for coming and supporting your students. This is why we do what we do. You'll notice they're wearing the year they graduate. So we've got some 2031 graduates, and I think there was a 2032 out there as well. 2033. So we've got some future Pasco graduates. So thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
So parents, We don't want you to feel obligated to stay through the rest of this meeting. If you would like to go, we will excuse you at this time. You do not have to stay, but we appreciate you coming. Don't feel obligated to leave, but we recognize that.
Thank you. And we want you to know that's going to be a tough act for anyone to follow. The poor classified are getting recognized today, and you stole all their glory.
And those of you who are standing in the back can feel free to come and fill in now. We have plenty of room. So next on the agenda, let's have the roll call. Jenny? Present?
Present.
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 Present. Present. Present.
Thank you. So now we'll have special recognition of our classified school employees and school retirees by Mr. Shane Ettinger.
I thought I'd just bring the preschoolers back up. Much better, much more entertaining than anything I could do tonight. Good evening, Board President Christensen, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. Governor Jay Inslee has declared March 12th through the 16th as Education Support Professionals Week in Washington, formerly known as Classified School Employees Week. Now, every hour of a student's day is made better by these hard-working, caring professionals who make sure that our students get to and from school in vehicles that are safe and well-maintained. They also make sure our students have the nutritious meals and snacks they need to keep their minds and bodies fueled and ready to learn. They deal with miles of paperwork to keep our schools on schedule, on budget, and on task. They also make sure that our facilities are beautiful and well cared for. They nurture, mentor, and guide students to accomplish all that they can and be the best that they can be. Our classified employees create an environment that fosters learning and shows our students and employees that they are treasured. Now, we have representatives from each school from our classified unions here tonight to help us celebrate. As I call your name, please come forward. And actually, if you could come forward this way, that would be best because we can give you your bag, and then you can come forward and stand here next to the screen. I know there's a lot of you, so we'll probably have to squeeze you all in. But we will be sending you home tonight with bags full of brand new Proud of Pasco lanyards that we ask you to distribute to all of the classified employees at your workplace. So from Angelo Elementary tonight, we have Lori Woodward and Lucy Aragon. From Captain Gray STEM Elementary, Paula Post. From Chess Elementary, Cameron Hoof. From Curie STEM Elementary, Nancy Ketterling. From Emerson Elementary, Mary Anderson. From Franklin STEM Elementary, Brenda Ursua. From Frost Elementary, Chantel Lamb. From Livingston Elementary, Kim Smith. From Longfellow Elementary, Martha Robles. From Markham Elementary, Veronica Passage. From McClintock STEM Elementary, Lynn Tarango. From McGee Elementary, Vicky Kiafilivan. From Robinson Elementary, Maricela Montalongo. From Twain Elementary, Sue Supples. From Whittier Elementary, Brian Green. From McLaughlin Middle School, Chris Patty Nash. From Ochoa Middle School, Bernice Del Campo. From Stevens Middle School, Beverly Cobb. From Chiawana High School, Janie Palomo and Nancy Martin. From Delta High School, Karina Shermer. From New Horizons High School, Sochi Sandoval. From Pasco High School, Abel Campos. From the iPal program, Tana Beagley. From the Parent Education Center, Esmeralda Valencia. From Nutrition Services, Marie Johnson. From Print Shop, Debbie Price. From Maintenance and Custodial, Travis Bowman and Ivan Torres. From the Booth Building, Sarah Mendoza. From the Early Learning Center, Susanna Sandoval. And from Transportation, Tamara Pearson, Ron Sanchez, Larry Rogers, and Sue Bumpus. Thank you all for coming tonight, and please join me in saying a huge thank you to all of our classified employees for the hard work and dedication that you provide to the Pasco School District and the students that we serve.
Yeah, just put them on. Just put those up.
Now we'll try to get you all together for a group photo.
So this happens every picture time. Nobody wants to be short, but it's always better if we move the people who are a little taller to the back and those who are a little shorter to the front.
A little less tall.
A little less tall. Find a gap.
All right, thank you very much. Well, President Lehrman, we're also honored tonight to have Helen Backshas, Elaine Banks, Shirley Ferrer, Jim Foster, and Don Parks here with us from the Benton Franklin School Retirees Association. Governor Jay Inslee has declared the week of March 29th through 25th as School Retirees Appreciation Week in Washington. I'd like to read the governor's proclamation, if you'll allow. Whereas the Washington State School Retirees Association recognizes all retired school employees, and whereas the WSSRA educates and assists retirees in meeting the special challenges retirement brings, and works to improve their general welfare, and whereas the WSSRA aids in advancing education and supporting higher educational standards, and whereas the WSSRA promotes group and individual involvement in charitable projects and activities, sponsors scholarships, and maintains interest in participation in educational community activities, now therefore I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim March 19th through the 25th, 2018 as School Retirees Appreciation Week. So, if we could have our folks, Helen and Elaine and your group, if you could please come forward, we'd like to thank you and the Benton Franklin School Retirees Association for your efforts to provide support for the students in our schools.
Yeah, you guys get the white screen background.
Wonderful students. And that we as principals and teachers know how that support staff is how important it is. Yes.
Thank you very much.
We'd also like to call Michelle Whitney up here because she's part of our group, but she's an active retiree.
Oh. She's not retiring yet.
No, as a matter of fact, I won't be retired in the graduate either. Got a ways to go. Thank you.
And please check out the website, wssra.org.
So thank you.
Very important though, that we know that retirees are steadfast supporters and ardent defenders of Pasco School District.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate that. There's times when we need that.
And many of you have been back every single year. It is so nice to see your familiar faces, and you know, I'm so glad you get to represent all of those that have served us so well in the past. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think most of our classified staff got away before we got an opportunity to thank them, but want to thank them we've got one representative here, I believe. So thank you to you and to the others who do so much to support our students. It doesn't happen without a big group of people. So thank you very much for all of your work. So with that, moving on, we'll get to item number 5, approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I move to approve the regular meeting minutes of February 27th, 2018.
I second the motion.
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the regular meeting minutes of February 27th, 2018. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And nays? Motion carries. All right, agenda review.
I would like to call the board's attention to an item under the consent agenda E. E-rate wireless upgrade contract was added, therefore denoted in red.
Thank you. So this is the part, so this is part of the meeting where we have audience comments. We would invite anybody who wants to share something with the board to come up to the microphone. Please state your name and your affiliation with the school district. And if you have a question or would like to additional information, you can leave your contact information in the back. We will give you 2 minutes to make your comments, and we'll open the floor now for those who want to address the board. Anybody wanting to address the board? Now is your opportunity. If not, final call. I will let you know that we do have some reports coming up, and after each of those, I will ask if anybody has comments at that time as well. I might need to be reminded by my 2 assistants, so thank you. So moving on, communications. We'll start with Mr. Lehrman.
I was able to attend the Read Across America celebration over at Mark Twain, and I know that many schools across the district take part in that. Sometimes they have guest readers come in. The class I went into had 4th graders reading to kindergartners, I believe. But I just wanted to thank, I think that's great to get those older kids reading to the younger kids. And also thank all of our community partners who take part, come in and volunteer at those types of things, and also provide resources so that our kids have incentives that get them actually reading, whether it's Read for the Ticket for free tickets to Silverwood, or whether it's Read for the Record and the different local businesses and national businesses, Pizza Huts and Arby's that give out free whatever it is, fries or pizza. To our ATP members that give away, or ATP partners that give away bikes to kids that read for records. So thank you to everybody that participated in Read Across America, and I always enjoy attending those events, and I know that it happens at many schools, and thank you for the invitations to board members to come read at those events.
I'll pass.
I attended 2 events in McLaughlin recently. Acting Can Be Murder was a play there that was done, was quite impressive, and the second was my son's band concert, which barely fit into their gathering area. I don't know what they call it, their commons area. It was jam-packed. So I just wanted to thank all of our teachers that are involved in the arts and that support that, everyone in our district that supports that. We hear a catchphrase a lot to increase or maximize instructional time, and while I think it's important to have sufficient instructional time, the other aspect of that is maximizing or making the instructional time more efficient and effective. And music and the arts and appropriate recess times are what helps make that time more effective, in addition to teacher development and obviously that type of aspect of classroom instruction. But I just hope that we always, as a community, historically we've had very successful music programs, and there's been some concern about that with some of our transitions with 6th grade in the elementary school and with our high school transitions to a trimester system. We've had concerns expressed to us about programs like music, and I just want to share my support and I absolutely do not want to see that diminish or decrease at all, and I would like to actually see it increase from what we have currently and what we've even had in the past, because that will improve our instructional time at all grade levels. So thank you.
So today was our last day of the trimester, so everyone's finally like not stressed out anymore because of finals. So that's cool. Spring sports started, and we're planning for Multicultural Week, either next week or the week after. I can't recall, but it's a week-long celebration of diversity. And personally, I was accepted to UW on Friday, so that's also really exciting.
Okay, so first of all, our dance team will be going to state next Friday. And also, more about sports. Our soccer team won against Kamaikan yesterday, 4-0. And I just received a message that our softball team beat Sunnyside 18-10. And we have our first varsity tennis match tomorrow against Kennewick at 3:30. And also, we are having registration for new students today and Thursday this week. And also today we had a guest speaker, Houston Kraft, who was very funny, and he was great at teaching our students how to be kind and inspiring more kids to be kind by sharing personal stories, which it was really good. So thank you.
So at Chiawana, we're celebrating a very big victory for us. Our speech and debate team won several trophies. And I believe, and I don't want to get it wrong from their words, but I think they said that we are the first school in Eastern Washington to take home any big district championships. So that is very exciting. We had, I want to say 10 people go to state, and 2 or 3 people are continuing on to the next round. So that is great for us. And then trimesters, our guidebook is up and on the internet, which a lot of the students are looking at. They're very happy about that. Everybody's ready and waiting, and registration will take place next week. So speaking of trimesters, for everybody watching and everybody here, we have at Chiawana, we have a trimester informational meeting tomorrow at 6:30, I believe in the auditorium or the theater. So if you want to be there, find out some new information, you're welcome to come. Chiawana is in the process of Munch Madness, which is a food drive, and we're doing pretty good for that, but we're welcoming any and all donations. So thank you.
Well, I got this invitation. As a board, we get lots and lots of invitations, and we do try to go to as much as we can, but it's difficult to get to everything. But I got this invitation with all these little first graders, and they're holding some signs, please come to our classroom. I have a picture, but I don't think I can show it on TV, can I? Probably not. Anyway, darling, and then this handwritten note. It just melted my heart, and I ended up taking a full-time teaching job until the end of the year in Richland. I can't teach them in Pasco because I'm on the board. So anyway, and I'm like, okay, if you hire me, I have to go back for this because I already told them that I was going to come. And they had no problem finding somebody to cover for that time. And it was just so fun. I actually drug my husband along because he speaks Spanish pretty well. And he was with his friend who's from Chile that works for his engineering company from Portland. So he's never been to Eastern Washington. He had no idea. He was just so thrilled with the demographics here, and he just enjoyed. And so they let him read a book too to these kids. So the 3 of us read these books to these little kids, and it was just so sweet. And it's just kind of what Pasco's all about. I also wanted to thank the classified. We realize the valuable contribution that you make, sometimes overlooked by parents, because as parents, we don't always see everything that you get to do, but, as a substitute teacher and teaching now, it has, I almost got teary-eyed because I've been teaching now in Richland full-time for a week and a half, and it's really kind of starting from scratch with lesson plans and everything. So I'm kind of like working 12 hours a day right now. So it's just busy. And whose names I know are the janitor, Mike, and the other janitor, oh, her name just escaped me, Laurel, and then Leanne. It's Leanne. And then, and the cafeteria is right by my classroom. And every day, Dawn is like, how are you doing? It's a tough class. You're going to get it. She's just so sweet. And I went and took just a little thing into these janitors and said, just to say thank you. I mean, really, they went above and beyond for me in so many different ways to help me get this classroom set up. And one of the men said, you don't have to thank me. I'm just doing my job. And I just appreciate all that you do. All that you do for kids every single day. Thank you.
So a couple of things since we last met. I attended a conference with some of our district administrators to learn a little bit more about bargaining and what's going on, or what we can expect with some of the legislation changes in this upcoming session. So we're getting started in that and looking forward to some good bargaining with our teachers. We had an open house at the Early Learning Center. I was able to attend that, and I've got to tell you, I wasn't planning to go, but ended up being able to go and meeting with some of the teachers there. We went through the whole building. One of the staff members there showed me around, and just meeting with them and seeing the work they do. I stopped in this one classroom, and she was telling me all of the things that she does, and I'm glad I've got the job I've got, because she has to keep track of lots of things and keep track of these kids, keep track of their growth, teach them, and I'm sure she is just an example of one of many of our teachers in this district. And one of the administrators there was talking about the time that she puts in, and I was just impressed with the work that, and again, I'm sure this is the Early Learning Center, I'm sure we have this across the district, so I don't think we can thank our teachers enough. And finally, this last weekend, I went to Bluewood skiing. And we went to the cafeteria, and I was sitting down to lunch, and there was a table there that had a little tent, a reserve tent on it, and it said ALAS. And I don't know if many of you remember Ovidio, who was on our board a few years ago. He was part of that group. Anyway, I wasn't sure it was them, so I went over and asked them, so what does ALAS stand for? And they said, ALAS, Ambassadors of Lakeview Achieving Success, which is a group of our Chiawana High School students, or now Chiawana students, who work with the younger kids in their community to help get them headed in the right direction. So, and they were there. I think it must have been kind of a thank you to them for the work that they were doing. They'd gone up and they were out skiing and snowboarding that day. I didn't see many of them. There was only a few of them there when I was there, but they probably had a dozen or so of those students. So I want to thank them for being part of these younger kids' lives and being an inspiration to them, and also to those in our community who support and took these kids up there to show them and thank them for the work that they are doing. And I think this is what makes our community great, is when we have people who are willing to give back and to mentor and guide those who are younger than them.
President Christensen, can I tell a
Sure.
story also? I hope I don't embarrass her here, but Miss Sue right here in the front, one of our classified staff, she works at Mark Twain, and I think this just exemplifies what we've been saying about how our classified staff add so much to our district. They do what they do out of love, but I know that I think it was a couple winters ago, not last winter when we had the big storm, maybe it was last winter. It was last winter, she says. Our kid, she works out and helps the kids with crossing sometimes, but at Mark Twain you have businesses that are there that are responsible to shovel their sidewalks, and you also have the city that's responsible for other parts. But on a day when there was lots of snow out there, Miss Sue found a shovel, and she could have just stayed in her car, stayed warm, and hopped out and helped a couple kids cross the road, but her and a couple other volunteers went out there out of looking out for our kids' safety, and went above and beyond and made sure that our kids were safe and shoveled the walkways there. And that's just one little story. I know she does a lot, and all of our classified staff does a lot to go above and beyond, and we appreciate the work that you do and all classified staff does, so thank you.
Mrs. Whitney, did you have anything?
I did. I apologize for being over here. I just wanted to be efficient. So I did also want to join the board in congratulating and thanking those of you who are classified employees and our retirees who are here tonight. Our classified employees are really the foundation on which all of us stand to do the work every day. And I think they're very much kind of the unsung heroes of the work. And I did want to point out to the board that each classified staff member was given a bag, and in the bag are lanyards. So the classified staff members will take those lanyards back to their classified friends. Now, certified folks, don't feel left out because you'll get yours when it's Teacher Appreciation Week. So their week comes first, so they get theirs first. But this has become a tradition as I've come in as a new superintendent. And we've just continued it. They'll get a lanyard every year. So that's what's in the bag. And I just wanted to echo Elaine Banks's comments about our school retirees really being champions for education and feeling extraordinarily supported as a new superintendent in my role with the retirees. And we're all personally connected to many of them that were up front. Matter of fact, Shirley Ferrari was my professor when I went to counselor school. And so they've deeply invested in the students of Pasco and grown-ups in Pasco as well. So we have a lot to be thankful for tonight. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So we'll move on to reports and discussions, beginning with organization and program audits. Mrs. Michelle Whitney.
So thank you for allowing me to give this presentation tonight. My intent is to be fairly brief. It's just really an opportunity for me to highlight the practice that was started well before my superintendency in gaining outside perspective about our organization. For the function, we are a learning organization, and sometimes having an outside person come in, a third party come in and give us an overview of who we are in terms of strengths and opportunities for improving our practice is an important piece of our work. So the purpose of an organizational audit or a review is really to procure an outside third-party perspective of our work functions with an eye on improving practices that are up against research-based best practices through the lens of some industry experts. And our goal then is always to obtain recommendations, and we continue to have that eye on consistency, efficiency, and proactivity. So the next slides are really just going to highlight a number of audits that are either going to happen, are happening, will start happening. So this organizational audit is a little bit of a twofold audit. One of the pieces of the audit is just an overall district office audit around, are we structured the right way in order to get the work done? Are our staffing levels appropriate for getting the work done? And again, taking a look at our organization through consistency, efficiency, proactivity, solution-oriented problem solving, and customer service, and identifying opportunities for us to increase budget efficiency through standardizing some budgeting processes across our departments. In addition, the scope of this particular audit got expanded. Though the board is aware, we are transitioning leadership for our fiscal services department as Howard Roberts retires at the end of March. And we're changing some leadership functions around in our curriculum professional development department. So we thought this was a good time to ask that those two pieces also be added to the scope of this audit, so that as new leaders step into new positions, or existing leaders step into new positions, that they had an outside third party's perspective of how we might improve those functions. Currently, there's a request for proposals that is posted based on our process as required by policy and law. The deadline for that, we need to get proposals to us by March 16th. Once we get those, we'll review the proposals, select a vendor, et cetera. And in terms of when the audit will start, will be largely based on when the vendor is available. Our goal would be to get this started as soon as we could, get it wrapped up as soon as we could, so that we could have some recommendations for implementation for next year. We also do a number of department audits. We're engaging with Hanover Research to do an employee services departmental audit that really focuses on how can we increase customer service, what do our stakeholders perceive as areas of strength, areas of improvement that we could take on there. In addition, departmental structure. And the board has talked about it either directly or indirectly in terms of asking questions around employee retention. So Hanover Research will dig into our employee retention data, compare it to state, local, and national benchmarks in terms of retention rates, and provide us some recommendations in terms of how to increase employee retention. There was a survey that was launched at the end of January, so Hanover is currently examining the survey data from the survey that was launched in January to develop a set of recommendations, as well as doing a deep dive into that retention data for our employee retention. OSPI is in our district doing a review of our transportation department. The scope of this particular audit is fairly narrow. It really has to do with busing services for our students who have special needs. We're expecting that report at the end of April, where district staff will review that with fully intending to implement those recommendations in the fall of 18, if not earlier. Sometimes recommendations come back that we can change even midstream, and if those recommendations exist as we look at this report, we would do that as well. A big audit or program audit that's happening is a combination two-way dual language audit and a bilingual program audit. And this is a little bit different in terms of approach. We've asked 2 different vendors to help us with this audit. Hanover Research really specializes in taking a look at programs through the current research and best practices that are available. Their talents and expertise really lie within benchmarking systems up against regional, state, and national benchmarks, where the Center for Applied Linguistics is more, they do a lot of professional, they have the technical expertise. So while Hanover can provide us the big picture research snapshot of where we are in terms of our program models, CAL, or Center for Applied Linguistics, once we have a picture of what we need to do differently, they can provide boots on the ground professional development for our teachers and staff. So this is a 2-pronged audit, and we're really excited. And they have had a history of working together, so this kind of audit for them is not new. It's new for us in Pasco, but it's not new for the 2 organizations, so we're excited about that. Hanover is due to complete their 2-way dual language review by the end of March. At the time that they complete that, they'll start the review for the bilingual program. And the Center for Applied Linguistics has been in the district on and off over the last couple weeks, so that part of the review and support is underway. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, this has been an area of interest for the board and a request over the last months. So again, we are partnering with Hanover Research and they'll do very similarly to what I described with the 2-way dual language and bilingual program audits. They review our programs through the lenses of current research and best practices. So they'll do a literature review. There'll be a stakeholder survey opportunity so we can gain perspective from our stakeholder groups that are either delivering the program or our students and parents who receive the program, and then again benchmark our program with others in the state and nationally. This review is scheduled to start in April. Student and family engagement, it's been a focus of the board in asking some questions around, are our current programs hitting it out of the park in terms of engaging parents and students? So Scholastic Education is in the district helping us with that. They will be in March. And it's really around reviewing our current programs and our current strategies and helping us kind of map out, are these the strategies we want to continue? If these are the ones we want to continue, how do we integrate them? How do we expand them? If we have gaps in our student and family engagement plan, what are the program recommendations for implementation? Literacy, these 2 consulting firms, Reach and SJC, have been in the district helping us review our literacy approach and their perspective and what they're learning in terms of diving into data. They've read with our kids really across demographic groups and across schools. Their findings and what they're finding as they dig into those things have been kind of simultaneously integrated into the development of our Pasco curriculum guides. So this review is a little different than typically a vendor comes in, they do a whole review, they write a report, they package the recommendations, they hand you a report with recommendations, and you implement the recommendations. The Reach and SJC have been digging at certain aspects of our literacy program, giving that feedback to staff who acts on it. They go and they read with kids, they bring that feedback back, our staff acts on it. So it's kind of a simultaneous review and implementation of recommendations as a collaboration. They've both been phenomenal supporters, and we've really learned a lot from them and have been able to hone some things already in our literacy program, which we would just, we anticipate that relationship will just continue to get better and better over time. Again, it was initiated in the spring of 17. It's been ongoing, and we're just kind of simultaneously implementing those recommendations. The next two slides are really about our visual and performing arts and our athletics program. We have a gentleman named Ken Axelson from Axelson Consulting who's been in the district starting of last fall. No, that's this fall. This fall, time flies. And it was really in anticipation of the shift in levy funding. We asked Mr. Axelson to come in and take a look at both our visual and performing arts programs and our athletic programs and look at it through really looking at the district administrative functions around those programs with a focus on equity, consistency, and efficiency. And our goal was to get out in front of the shift in levy funding in just really understanding how we're utilizing resources to support those programs and where we may be able to create some efficiency so that we can continue to support in a robust way those amazing programs that Dr. Richardson spoke about, which we fully intend to continue to support and to grow as part of the board's outrageous outcome around extracurricular activities and a part of a belief system that Pasco School District has had for decades around our music programs and our athletic programs. So those are the audits that are currently underway. As each of those audits finish up, you could expect us as staff to be in front of you sharing the recommendations and providing next steps in terms of what we'll actually do with the information that we get. I think another big picture next step that I want to make the board aware of is I would fully intend over the next 6, 8, 9 months to create a cycle of departmental review that's transparent so people can anticipate. So for example, if I'm the administrator in charge of employee services, I know on a cycle once every 6 years or whatever the appropriate cycle is that my department will be reviewed and or when we have a leadership turnover. When I went into the employee services department as the district leader, it was just after an audit. So I walked in as a new leader and was handed an audit that was just extraordinarily helpful for me as a new leader. So I think on a cycle and when there's a leadership transition in a core departmental function, I think are two great times to take a look at our organization through a third-party lens. So again, I fully anticipate that you'll have in the next 9 months or so a cycle that's transparent for people in terms of how we do our audits.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitney. Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Whitney?
Excuse me. I saw equity, consistency, efficiency in the athletic audit there. When we look at STEM and in particular STEM and the bilingual programs, it said it's going to look at the programs and do literature reviews and stuff. Will they also look at how we're doing STEM and bilingual and make sure that we're being consistent and efficient and equitable in how we offer those programs?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. It really is a core purpose overall. I didn't highlight it on each slide, but that's really a lens for us that was identified last year by the board and by our stakeholder during my listening tour, and so that'll continue to be a focus for us. And I didn't call it out on every slide, but you're absolutely right. It's a pair of glasses that we wear when we look at all of our programs.
Is this separate from the highly capable audits that we kind of, oh, that was kind of a funny smile.
Well, here's the thing. This report got a little bit unwieldy, and so I'm laughing because I took that out because that audit really happened last year, and so I thought, oh my gosh, how far do I go back in reporting on these audits? But we did do an audit. We had some help and support from an amazing consultant whose name is escaping me. You and I
From
both,
Montana, she was
yeah, we both learned a lot from her,
Yes.
and we did implement a lot of her findings, and we implemented them and will continue to use her work to help and support us. So I think we all found her very engaging and informative. And like I said, I'm laughing because I took slides out of things that we did last year because I thought, oh my gosh, this report got totally unwieldy on me very quickly. So that's why I laughed.
No, that's great. No, I think this is exciting. I think it really answers it really responds to a lot of the board's requests that we make sure that the programs that we have are useful and that they're getting the results that we want. And I think it's really important to examine that so that we can use best practices. So I think this is fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for the information. The STEM programs audit had the stakeholder surveys listed, and I can imagine that may be part of the dual language program audit, some of those other ones. How is our community going to be notified of that? Is there going to be, well in advance, some notification on the district website for a certain time frame? Because I can imagine those programs, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of people, potential stakeholders that could provide input on what our experience has been the last couple of years, and I really want to see that feedback from them, if not just in that format, but maybe in other formats as well, as some sort of town hall meeting, summit, that type of thing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that perspective, and certainly we always are exploring options and the mechanisms by which we communicate, and I think it's probably the answer to the question is a variety of all of the things that you described in terms of potentially a mailer home, on the website, face-to-face. I mean, we'll have to explore what options we have, but the goal is to get a very, very high response rate, and so we'll work really hard to make sure we do that.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitney. Appreciate that information. Don't leave yet, because I've got a question. So I think this is great, because this will give us some good information that we can use. My question is, so we'll get a report, presumably, from each of these audits. Is that report something that one of us could read through, or anybody in the community could read through without a lot of knowledge and understand and make sense of it without getting confused?
Sure. Typically what happens is we get a really in-depth technical report, and it'll have an executive summary. So your reports are usually fairly robust and dense, and then the executive summary is usually a page or two.
Are these available for community members to read? I mean, I don't want to confuse people, but if there's something that they could read that says this is kind of the findings of it, I think that would be helpful.
We haven't done that, but it doesn't mean that we can't. And I think that's a great suggestion and something we could work toward for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think just keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
So, all right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Mrs. Whitney. Anybody from the audience want to comment on our audits? Now's your chance. All right. Thank you. Next up is School Safety and Security Report by Dr. Susana Reyes and Mr. Randy Nunemaker. Actually, before we start, I'm going to just comment on this. We didn't talk about this at our last board meeting, and we got some comments on that. And I don't think it's because it's not important to us. That was just after the shooting down in Florida, and so I think we were a little remiss in not addressing that. But I can assure you it's not because we're not doing anything. We have wonderful administrators who are taking care of that and watching out for us and our students. And so we're going to get an update on those things that they're doing tonight. So thank you, Dr. Reyes and Mr. Nunemaker.
Thank you. Good evening, President Christensen, members of the board, and Superintendent Whitney. This evening we'll be providing an overview of school safety and security updates and related activities. Topics include information about safety measures that are currently in place, a brief description of school-level safety drills, and an update on the district's crisis response planning activities. Additionally, we'll provide an overview of planned safety improvements, as well as information regarding a facility safety and security assessment of all district schools, which will be followed up with a community panel discussion next Thursday, March 22nd. As always, public comments and questions are welcomed, and those will be collected via the board-established comment process. And to provide the details on these topics, I'd like to invite Executive Director of Operations, Mr. Randy Nunemaker, to the podium.
Thank you, Board President Mr. Christensen, Superintendent Whitney, and board members. The district has a number of safety measures currently in place that support the district and school-level crisis response plans. At the district level, the incident command structure supports and provides a coordinated response and logistics for managing an emergency throughout the district. The school-level crisis plans are site-specific and address an emergency at any specific building. Schools are required to have at least one drill per month, including summer sessions with students. Drills are recorded in the Washington State Rapid Responder System. The district has given access to the Pasco Police Department to see our access to every building in the district. The district has school resource officers and safe security staff reporting at our secondary schools. All primary entry doors have electronic locking capabilities. Access cards can unlock the door, or it can be remotely scheduled to lock or unlock on a specific schedule. Added lighting around portables has been ongoing as portables have been installed or relocated. Each building has a lockdown button that will lock access doors and dispatch the police department. Our newer schools and recent Pasco High School remodel have security foyers where visitors must be identified and buzzed in before they can enter the school. There are exterior cameras, monitoring systems at the schools, and signage to direct visitors to the main entrance of a facility. Inside door locking devices and peepholes have been provided for doors. Fencing has been installed around elementary sites and 2 of the middle school sites. Radios have been supplied to all buildings to help with communication. All buses have cameras and GPS tracking systems. Per RCW requires the district to have emergency response systems that provide access for first responders and the district to preloaded data about specific schools and include mapping the school. This is an example of a mapping system that can be used in an event. All first responders statewide have access to this information. The district website and app now include the Safe Schools Alert Tip Reporting Tool. This can be done anonymously, and posters have been provided to schools and information sent home on how to access the tip line and for reporting. The district has asked the Pasco Police Department to assist in reviewing and updating its crisis response plan, and has met with city officials back in September of 2017. In November, with the police department, we met to develop a shared understanding regarding partnerships and procedures for our crisis response planning. In December, we reviewed the district plan with the Pasco Police Department and scheduled a tabletop drill to test our current plan. That tabletop drill occurred on January 17th with a number of agencies that you see listed here. Training and planning activities include updating the current plan and incorporating recommendations resulting from that tabletop drill. Training will begin in the spring for district leadership, with training for staff prior to the 2018-19 school year. As part of the bond projects, the district will be installing security foyers, cameras, access control, and surveillance monitors at the schools that you see listed here. Originally, these were scheduled to start construction in 2019. However, that timeline has been moved forward. So this timeline is very tentative at this time, with the goal to begin construction at some sites in July or August. Additional safety improvements that were not included on the bond are for the schools that you see here, and they do include security foyers, access control, cameras, and surveillance monitors. The district has requested a safety and security assessment of all of its facilities. This will be a multi-agency effort participating with those listed here and others as available. The facility safety and security assessment timeline has the multi-agency tour beginning March 14th through 16th. And on March the 22nd, we'll hold a community panel meeting at the Pasco Police Department Training Center from 6 to 7 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Nunemaker. So as you can see, there are a lot of activities taking place, and we look forward to gathering the feedback and recommendations from the safety and security assessment and the panel discussion. This information will be reviewed and then presented in a report to the board at a future meeting. As always, safety and security of our students and staff is our top priority, and we truly appreciate and are deeply grateful to the City of Pasco and the Pasco Police Department and county agencies for their support and our longstanding partnerships.
Thank you, Dr. Reyes and Mr. Nunemaker. We'll open it up to the board for questions or comments.
At Delta, I've noticed, it's interesting that we had this presentation. I've noticed that we've had a lot of increase in safety and security measures. For example, during class, we have our doors locked at all times when normally we left them open. And we've also been talking about lockdown drills and like what we do, and we're gonna have a lockdown drill coming up at some point, but we've been talking about what to do during that situation. And I forgot to mention this during communications, but tomorrow at 10 a.m. Delta is having a walkout for school safety. So if anyone wants to attend and show support, so.
So there's been talk about Granger School. They have the new backpack rule. I think it's no backpacks or clear backpacks or something like that. And then arming staff. So I know a lot of students have been talking about that. Is there any truth to that we're implementing them here, those rules here?
Our intention is to engage with our multi-agency review and for those agencies to make recommendations in terms of what would keep kids most safe. So in terms of, we have made no decisions about what we will be implementing or not, because it's very important to us as school district officials that we hear from our local experts in terms of safety issues. And that was that whole list of local agencies who's going to be in our schools for the next 3 days starting tomorrow. After that's over, those groups will have recommendations. And so we can't anticipate what those recommendations will be, but as soon as we get them, we'll be sharing them with the board.
And how often do we have a shelter-in-place drill? Because that was my first time hearing about that one.
Sure. A shelter-in-place drill is one of the drills that a school does, and they have an option. They're required to do the once-a-month drills, but they should have a shelter-in-place drill at least once in that process throughout the year.
I had a question on the on the sheet that you have for the multi-agency effort, and maybe it's too late with the compressed timeline, but I see you got Washington State Patrol up there, and everything else is just Franklin or Pasco. And I know that we work with other cities. Like if I go somewhere, just the other day I was at the Winter Carnival, and they're telling me, come down to the Kennewick Police Station and we'll check out your baby's car seat, stuff like that. I'm just curious if the Franklin County Fire District, let's say, and the Pasco Fire Department, as far as knowing about kind of school standards and what they see in most schools, they're going to know what they've seen in Pasco. So does it make sense to try and get Kennewick, Richland, Benton County departments involved in that, because they see different stuff to tell us best practices or where we're strong or where we could improve, just to have a wider view there? Does that make sense?
Sure, sure, and you're absolutely right. That's a great question. The agencies that we're working with, the local agencies, Pasco, Franklin County, and those, they actually go out and they also train with other agencies, other police departments. They go literally to other states. They go across the nation. Matter of fact, I was contacted from Texas by the Pasco Police Department in a training they were at down there. So it's more of a nationwide effort. They go all the way over to the East Coast for training. They gather all that information so they can bring it back and share it with us. So that's just one piece, is that our first responders, at least in our area, they reach out, they travel, they go gather the information and bring it back, and of course they share it with us. Also with that, an example would be a few years ago we had a training at Ochoa Middle School. We had agencies from Spokane, Yakima, Walla Walla, fire departments, police departments, sheriff's departments all come participate in the drill that we were having, because they wanted to see how we did that. So yes, there's a sharing of information across the agencies and districts.
Cross-pollination comes from our local first responders going out. We don't need to invite other first or local responders in. They've already gotten that cross-pollination, you're saying, by going out to other
Correct.
school districts. They went to see other schools and stuff like that.
Correct.
Have we ever considered, and I know it's still in the process, but adding maybe like a SRO, another SRO, or security guards? Because I know personally at Chiawana, we have quite a few kids, and I believe it's eight or nine, I could be miscounting, security officers. And it does get hard for them to track everybody, and still, I know there's one person that's always on the camera, so maybe 7 actively doing the things outside school, checking the perimeter. I know some make sure cars are parked right in the parking lot. They guide us, because it does get pretty crazy in our parking lot. And just do things just like that. But considering how many students we have, and the security guards do so many jobs, have we considered adding to that, adding more security guards?
I think that's the superintendent, that goes along with what her answer was, is that all that will be assessed when we do the tours of the building and we review our policies, procedures, and we put that plan together. Then we'll be able to have a better answer for those things.
And any of those items as students that you want us to consider, you don't hesitate to shoot them in an email to Randy or I, and we'll make sure that they get on the list for consideration. Any of those ideas that you have or you come up with after, don't hesitate to send them to us. And just for reference, that's what we've also done with community concerns that we've received. We've printed off all those emails. Those are in a file. Those community questions will be part of this agency's review, as well as being able to field some of those. So we've collected all of the input and feedback we've gotten from community up to this point. The students' questions will be recorded. And then, like Randy mentioned, we'll have another opportunity for community interface with the multi-agency effort on the 22nd.
Can you comment a little bit more about the panel discussion meeting that's 6 to 7, what the format of that's going to be? My gut feeling is that's going to need to be a lot longer. And kind of, are people allowed to come and ask questions? Is there going to be some discussion between community members? Is it in this panel of law enforcement? Like, what is the setup of that going to be?
Yeah, this is going to pretty much mirror one that we had back around 2013, 2014. We had a panel just like this, and we invited the public in. So this isn't the first time we've done that. It'll be very similar to what that was, where we will have the chief of police, the sheriff, chief of fire department, one of the SROs, supervisors, sergeant will be there. District will be there, of course, to answer questions. The idea is where we want to get feedback from the community. We want them to provide us suggestions. It's more of an opportunity for all the agencies to listen and hear what the community's concerns are, what their suggestions are, and if there's questions that are asked that we can answer, we'll do that at that time.
Great, thank you. This is something we've obviously received a lot of feedback from the community on, and I think it's an important issue to address. It feels like this is a big moment in our country and our society in general, similar to 9/11. Things changed after that, and as we may not want to acknowledge that or say that we want to not change the way we live, but the fact is that we're going to have to, because it's not acceptable that our children keep getting slaughtered like this. So that's not an acceptable way to keep moving forward. I'm disheartened by the way most national media has polarized this issue, and essentially you have to be in favor of more gun control laws, or you're in favor of arming teachers and staff, and they've tried to just make it simple and then just separate everyone to size and make this a political issue, and that's a huge mistake and really does a disservice to our kids and our society. I really think everything needs to be on the table for this type of discussion. There's no categorizing people or saying, well, you're a law enforcement, so you must, or you're a hunter, you want this, you're a Republican or you're Democrat. We really need to analyze this openly, honestly, and have an actual dialogue where we're not categorizing and criticizing people, because none of these things in and of themselves are going to make much of a difference. In our state, if people didn't read, our governor has already just signed a new gun law banning bump stocks in our state. Does that make anyone feel safer? Or it doesn't. I think it would be naive to think that that's going to make any difference in this type of thing happening. I'm not against it. I'm not saying I'm for or against it, but it's naive to think that doing something like that is going to make a huge difference. We really need to assess all of these things, and some of the things that have already brought up. Some of these things are simple that we're just going to have to change our mindset. Gun-free zone signs. Maybe we just remove all of those. It's just a silly thing to say gun-free zone. Someone that's intent on causing harm, they don't care about your sign that says gun-free zone. The only thing that does in my mind is tells people that are good people that we don't want you to bring your gun here. Do we have panic buttons at all of our entry desks? Maybe multiple panic buttons where they're easily pressed. Do we the locking doors that Ms. Stoll, that's a great idea. We can no longer just have all the doors of schools just open so that someone could come in. Do we add greater security in our entrance where people actually have to, even if they're known to the secretary, show a photo ID and be given, had a picture taken, printed off a sticker that they put, I'm a visitor during this time, this is who I am, I've checked in at the front. It's way too easy to get into schools. You can walk in, you can wander around the school. All of these things need to be on the table. There are already districts that allow staff to be armed. This is not a new concept. There are school districts in our region that already allow this. They have staff, administration that are armed. It's not aware to publicly who they are, but that's allowed. So all of these things we need to review, and some of these can be things that we can implement immediately. If we decide, removing the gun-free zone signs, adding a panic button, these are things that are simple to do, that if we have the willpower, we can easily do that. Some of these are going to be more long-term. Portables, I think that is, to me, that is not the safest solution. I actually think it's, in our bond, I think it's good that we're adding security, but it's interesting we have this big security for her, but if half the school's out in portables, it's just kind of, we want to get away from that. We want to get to where kids need to be in a secure building. I'm sending my children to school for the day, and I'm trusting the people there to take care of them. And that's it's a scary thing, and we have a trust thing, and but we have to make sure that they're protected. I think one thing that a friend of mine mentioned to me, and I really appreciated this insight, we need to change our culture and have all students and staff be more observant of their surroundings. And I'm not saying that any of these shootings could have been prevented, but the fact is we look too much at our phones and with our headphones in, and we're just not as aware of people around us, of our environment. We need everyone to be essentially a security guard, essentially just to watch it. Be aware of what's going on around you. Be aware of what students talk about. Be aware of things that look suspicious, things like that. This has to be part of this changing culture that we're going to have to live in our country. There have always been guns. The percentage of households that actually own a gun is less now than it was 30, 40 years ago, even though there are many more guns, but it's actually people that already have guns increasing the amount of guns that they have. but this type of thing didn't used to happen. There's another reason, and so all of these things have to be addressed. I'm very much looking forward to this discussion, and I intend to find a way to be there, and I hope that our community will come and share all these ideas and input, and that we can do it honestly and without criticizing or categorizing people based on their comments, and have an open discussion about this, and really a heartfelt discussion, so that our children can be safe, because none of us want to have something like this happen. And in reality, no matter what we do, it's still possible. Nothing is going to be completely 100% prevent any of this. It happens everywhere, but that doesn't remove from us the obligation to do all we can to prevent it. So that was very long, but thank you for bringing this up.
President Christensen, I'll try to be real brief, but it has to do with culture, and then also I have a cost funding question here. So the environment, and it's a cultural thing that President Christensen and I work in. It's often said we kind of have 4 key things that we follow, and they always say safety's number 1. So anytime there's a meeting of more than 2 people, we have to have a safety topic. You guys might be able to guess where we work. Next is quality, and we want to make sure that quality is high, and then after that is cost and schedule. And it brings me back how quickly paradigms shift here, because when we were talking bonds just several months ago, a year ago, we had an amount of money in there to do safety upgrades in the community. Some members of the community kind of used the same argument that Dr. Richardson alluded to, that if we can't fix it all, why fix anything? Because there's always going to be some hole in it. So I appreciate that you guys are doing this full look at it. We were able to secure some funding. It'd be nice if we just, and like I said, for me, safety would always be number 1, But my question goes back, question and comment is, where do we get the extra funding that wasn't covered in the bond here for the safety upgrades? And then the second thing is just something we can all do is, in order to get adequate funding for us to upgrade our safety and security where we need to be, and the rest of the state needs to be, I think we can talk to legislators. You've asked for legislative priorities, that there's some standard, but also that there's funding for schools that need to be upgraded in the construction assistance program, because not every school district's able to go and get that funding. So that could be a legislative priority that we talk about at another time. But also just, it's a brief question on the schools that aren't included in the bond. How do we get the funding, and will we have enough to do the projects that we need to do?
As far as those larger projects, that's something we'll have to look at, and I'll have to get that information back to you. We have a safety security budget every year that we use to maintain and keep our security systems up and running, and then also it allows us to do some enhancement to the existing systems we have. But that budget will still have to be put together yet. And where that comes from, that'll be a decision we'll have to make.
Now, I think it would be a great idea to focus on not just in-state security measures, looking at other schools, and I don't know how much truth this is, because I read it off of a website, and tabloids do a lot of stuff to a lot of things, but I was looking at Southwestern High School in Indiana, I believe, the unquote safest school in America, and they said that their security system, and it was pretty amazing, it had like trap doors and things flying out the ceiling and whatever, but they said it only cost them $400,000. Now I don't know how truth that is to that, but if that is true, that it only cost them $400,000, and I think it was, they have 1,700 students, I believe. Maybe that's something that we could look at, try to compare how they got to such a low cost for such amazing products. Because I know they partnered, it was a project that their Indiana Star Security in their town promoted. So maybe we could look at out-of-state security measures to compare and contrast.
I'm impressed with the scope of work that has been brought together in such a short amount of time. I'm also excited to see what the community has to say on this. I know I've had some safety concerns in the past, and I've really appreciated how quickly those were solved. And so I'm grateful for this. I think it's going to be great for our community to get involved with. And I appreciate the timely manner that, because I know there's a lot on your plates right now, and I appreciate the timely manner that this was all, brought together in. Obviously became immediate priority, and I'm sure our community, who rightfully so has an increased interest in this safety now, hopefully it will help put them at ease and hopefully help our students to be safer.
So I wanted to just make a couple of comments as well. Wouldn't it be nice if we just had a button we could push and zap anybody who had malintent towards anybody, whether it was in Walmart or in our school buildings or at work? But I'm afraid that's not going to happen. First of all, thank you for being proactive. I mean, you can see, I think our district has been very proactive when it comes to safety and security. We've had cameras and things that we've done for a long time, and I think that's because of the foresight of our district leaders. So, and starting in September of last year, I mean, I know this has been in the planning, but we've been taking steps all along up to, and then this is just another reminder of how important that is. These things can be very emotional, and they elicit a lot of emotions from us, and we can tend to overreact to these. And some people even take advantage of this to implement things that maybe not be so helpful. I appreciate the disciplined approach that you guys are taking. You're going out and getting lots of resources that we would expect to be experienced in this and that can give us some good input. And I'm looking forward to that, to their input. Certainly we want our community's input. We want to know what your ideas are and what your expectations are. And then at the end of that, I think it's good to keep in mind that everything we do comes with a cost. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't spend those dollars to do that, but we will have to prioritize, and maybe there's some things that we don't do, and we shift some of these dollars over to more into safety and security from another area of our budget. But I appreciate this. I'm looking forward to the results of this, and I just commend you on what I believe is a pretty disciplined approach to addressing this. So thank you. Anything else? So thank you, Mr. Nunemaker, Dr. Reyes. We will now, if there's anybody from the community that wants to comment, we invite you to come and share your thoughts. Please give us your name and affiliation with the school district. Yes, if you could go to the microphone, that would be great.
Thank you, Board. My name is Robert Green. I believe most of you have received a letter from me a couple weeks ago and an email because I was concerned about school safety. I'm glad to see things are being accelerated. I am wondering about the meeting on March 22nd, how much community involvement will be in it, because we bring the experts in from police staff and stuff like that. But I do question, does community have more? Just listen to Aaron, for instance. You had a lot of great ideas. Are they putting those into play? I've heard a lot of things talking about crisis management. I don't want the crisis to happen. Stop the people from coming in, right? One example I gave, Livingston Elementary. That's where my kids go to school. They go in the door right there. To the right's the cafeteria. 11 o'clock, you got a room full of kids. Sandy Hook, I bring this one back because it hits me hard. They walked in and killed an entire first grade classroom, right? One kid survived. All my friends are dead. It hits me hard. I really want to see something improved to prevent someone from getting in the classroom. I heard about backpacks. I'm glad you talked about that. You know, do we need something like a metal detector, not highly sensitive, that's going to pick up a pen, but it's going to pick up an AR-15, for instance, that's in a tennis bracket thing, right? That's how easy it is to get in. Sandy Hook had the doors locked. They broke the window on the door, and I saw one of our pictures here. It had a window on the door. We broke in that way and walked in and got the first grade classroom. So it's really sensitive to me, how much do we keep that from happening in the school? I'm glad we got crisis to response, but I don't want to ever exercise that. I don't want to take too much time too. Lockdown plans, I heard about the trailers outside, that's another thing, as far as portables go. And one of the things that occurred to me was, can we put a metal plate on 2 corners there? So when my lockdown plan is we go to that corner, so stray bullets don't come through. A 223 bullet will go right through those portables, but it won't go through metal plate. Just things like that, right? So I think there's a lot of people in the community who can actually bring up good ideas that may not be as expensive. I know I wrote a lot in my letter, and I sat there and jotted down a lot of ideas while I was doing this. I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Thanks for coming.
I just had a quick comment. So he mentioned the metal plates. We just had a discussion about this during my Spanish class, I believe like 2 days ago. And she said she was in a classroom. She said they called it a fishbowl classroom or something. But it's at the end of the hallway, and there's a hallway right here, a hallway right there, and a hallway right here. And she has windows on her back wall, and then just all the walls are pretty thin. So she was trying to think of ways to come to protect the students, because all 3 walls are thin or made of glass. So if anything was to happen, stray bullets meant for anybody, then there was really no place to go except that 4th wall, but that 4th wall was directly across from the window. So just things like that.
Another concern I did hear about the portables was that there's only 2 exits, and it's the window and the door, and they're both on the same side. And it just brought a lot of conversation up, and I think our portables, the students that are in the portables are at more risk because we can't lock the doors, right? We have one door, and it's pretty easy to get inside of the portable through a window. And I do want to thank our school I noticed that more security guards are around those entrances and around our portables, but our portables are definitely a big issue.
Thank you. Anybody else from the community want to comment? Any audience? Last call. All right, thank you, audience members. So that concludes our discussion on security. Our final report and discussion tonight is a discussion on board meeting structure. So, and we won't have a presenter on this. This will be us as a board. So in our retreat, actually, before we move on, so let me just, sorry, I wanted to just get some clarification on that meeting on the 22nd. So just, is that going to be on the website? How's word getting out on that?
So there's already been social media notice gone out. Keeper's done a story on it. There's been a variety of different media coverages on it. Looking at Shane, it's on the website.
Okay, so keep that in mind. Sorry to come back, but I just wanted to make sure that you remember that, are aware of that, and that we're prepared for that. If we need to, I'm hoping that they will stay longer. I don't know. Okay, I'm sure they will, but thank you. All right, sorry. Coming back. So at our retreat that we had last week or a couple weeks ago, we talked about our board meetings and about an opportunity to have more discussion as a board on topics that that are of importance to us. As you're aware, our current board meeting structure is pretty structured. We have business that we take care of. We have some reports. If we have action items, we take care of those, and then we don't really have an opportunity for just inter-board discussion. And so we looked at different ways that we could structure our meeting potentially to have more discussion as a board on subjects that might be more pertinent to things that we feel we need to address. And so we wanted to kind of open it up tonight and talk about that. So I think to begin with, Sarah, you're over there. Can you put up our current, so Sarah has prepared some slides here. Our current, all right, so let's just go ahead back to that one you just showed there. And I think these are on your computers as well, if you want to look at them there. But so Sarah has kind of broke this down into the areas of, I won't say business, but the format of our meetings. We have discussion and study sessions where we can get we have a little more discussion, a little more involved, in-depth dive into issues that we want to address. We have communications that we as a board do, and things that we get out to to our constituents. We have routine business that we have to take care of on a regular basis, and then we have action items. And she has put these into, or kind of taken our current format and color-coded them like this. So if you want to go to that next slide. So this is kind of what our structure looks like. So typically before our board meeting, we'll have a study session. That's typically an hour long. Sometimes they go a little longer. We don't have one every board meeting. Today, for example, we didn't have one, but we typically have a study session where we'll talk about specific items and study them more in depth. Then we get into the regular board meeting, starting there with the call to order, the flag salute, roll call, all formal things that we have to do. Then we have special recognition. Then we go into the approval of the minutes. And you can see there we get, so it generally takes us about a half hour to get through that first part down to communications there. Then we go into reports and discussions. Generally, we'll have somebody standing at the podium who will give a report on something related to our schools. Then if we have action items, we'll take care of those. Then the consent agenda. We'll go over what we might discuss in a future meeting. Typically, we end our formal meeting at that time. If we have an executive session, we go into executive session, then we adjourn. So we're trying to structure this so that we can get the business done and then have time at the end of the meeting for more, I don't know that informal is the right word, but more board discussion on things. We've had some issues or subjects come up that I think have been of interest to the board, but we just felt like we haven't had an opportunity to discuss those. So we've looked at a potential reformatting of our meeting. So if you look at this, we'd have our study session at the beginning at 4:30. We would have an executive session probably right after that. And then you can see we've kind of grouped into these color-coded groups, the business, the actions, any reports and discussions. So what this has done is moved all of our formal business that we have to take care of in a board meeting up to the front of the meeting, and then we have additional items down below. So I would, if anybody has any input on this, any discussion that they would like to bring up on this, I would welcome any input.
So because the executive session is now before, after the study session, would that mean the 6:30 time would be moved back, or?
We don't have any intention of changing the time. We see typically right now, in a normal board meeting day, we would have our study session starting at 4:30. We're typically done by 5:30, or that's our goal, is to be done by 5:30, and then we have an hour break. Our goal would be to more efficiently use our time, maybe take a half hour in the executive session and then a half hour break between that and the start of the board meeting, and then carry on from there. That just saves us from staying after the board meeting and making our night a little longer.
Okay.
So just using a half hour of that time between for our executive sessions, if we have one.
I appreciate the work. I think this looks pretty good. I like the executive session before. It kind of holds us to a time and makes it so we don't have to be here as late, because some people don't realize maybe that sometimes we're here very, very late. And so I prefer that very much. And if we go over, then we have to just carry that over to the next week. The audience comments, I would move that up ahead of special recognition, just because it's more user-friendly for people that are coming from work, that need to get home, that just wanted to come and give some feedback or make a comment. I think that as a previous frequent commenter at board meetings before I was on the board, it'd be nice to have that right as soon as possible at the beginning, so that if people could come and then leave. So I would put that ahead of special recognition, but I think it's great. We can certainly try it, and if we don't like it, we can put it back. Nothing holds us to this, and I'm all for trying it.
So this discussion we're having here tonight would be something along the lines of what we would do. Typically in a board meeting, we have business that we take care of. We get some reports, some of them required, some of them just information, and if we have to take action on something, then we take action. Consent agenda, we would like to move all of that up, but this would free up an opportunity for us to discuss some things, and like board meeting schedule or agenda. I think we had several things come up in our retreat, none of which come to mind right now that we...
Some of them were way more exciting than this.
Well, definitely. So we want to carve out some time for that. Now, we would probably have to keep it. Sarah's sitting over there. Sarah keeps us in line. She's our legal counsel. Within the normal structure of a board meeting, but I don't know how much interest this is to these people sitting here. One thing I don't want to do is for people to feel like they have to stay after our actions are done and any formal reports are done. But certainly it would be recorded. People could watch it. But we would be able to have more discussion where we can interact with each other. That's kind of, we're limited in that because of the Open Public Meetings Act, and I just don't think we get enough opportunity to share some of our thoughts and concerns on things that we should be discussing. So this just gives us that opportunity, still in the board meeting, but outside of the formal portion of it, to have more discussion. And I think Dr. Richardson, you talked about how do we get things on the agenda that we want to discuss, and this gives us an opportunity to put it on there and bring it up. We wouldn't necessarily have a report. We could have a report if we needed that to get kind of the conversation started, but just allows us an opportunity to discuss things. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and one of the topics I would love to have would be like a fourth high school that would be smaller, so we didn't have to wait 6 years or 5 years for who we don't know yet. Right. We haven't planned, but to get another comprehensive high school where we could provide, because right now Delta's accepting around 40% of the Pasco students that want to go there, and so something like that, we're very not equitably serving our students. I would love to have a discussion about that. Since we're on the topic of board meetings, I'll just bring up briefly as well. We had talked in the board retreat about audience comments. I really want to make sure we keep that. I like the general, how we've done it. The general audience comments at the beginnings for feedback or concerns, and then after reports, like Mr. Green, I just really appreciate you coming and waiting and giving your feedback, even though you sent us an email, because your email to us is a perfect way to do it, but this is recorded and then people can actually hear your comments, anyone that wants to in the whole community. So that was a really perfect example of how that can work. And I think we need to continue to offer that to our community to give feedback. The other thing I just ask about it, we've brought up lots in the past about live streaming our meetings, and I would still like to see that happen. And I know we've worked on that, but I would love to see a timeline, or I don't know if we have to discuss it more, but I really want to see that come to pass as soon as possible as well.
Yeah, there's so many things that are really valid concerns, some equity things across all of our school district that Scott has brought up, these school things that you have brought up. And so in being very responsive to the board, and because of, I know what it was like as a brand new board member saying, I'd really like a report on this, I'd really like a report on this, but the president of the board and the vice president of the board set the agenda, and oftentimes that had nothing to do with what, it felt like it had nothing to do with what the rest of the board wanted. And I don't think they meant it to be that way, but there's so much business that has to be taken care of. There's so limited time to put in different things. And I feel, in a leadership position now, that it shouldn't just be us making those decisions. So this is going to allow the whole board to make those decisions. In doing that, we do need to reduce the time that our board meetings are. are allotted. Can I go into that next part right now?
About Edmonds?
Yeah, about
So,
Edmonds really quickly.
So I would prefer that we wait where we have more time. So part of the challenge with this is this.
This
I
is,
think,
I'm not going to go into detail. I'm
Okay,
going
that's-
into very rough overviews.
and we will discuss it further at another time. Is that what you're
Totally
suggesting?
discuss
I think this
further
is
at another
something,
time.
this is a great example of what we could discuss as a board.
This isn't just this. When we were talking about this, how do we reduce this time that we're in here? What can we get rid of? You know, Scott and I have advocated for these data bites for forever, and having school reports at agenda meetings and more of this. And we really need to be very particular on what we have in our board meetings to make them shorter, and then extend these reports later that might have some of these things in them. When we were talking about this, how could we reduce them? We realized that our data bites haven't hit the mark as well as we would have hoped they would have. And they're just not serving the needs that we would have hoped. And this idea of the way Edmonds School District does things, where they, instead of having school reports and all of these data bites, they have a certain amount of data, very specific, that all of the schools report. All of the elementary schools would report the same, the high schools would report the same. And then they would, and then we would have board members, instead of having board members that tried to visit all 22 schools, we would be assigned to schools and we would be responsible for being there. So there's things, and what that we could eliminate is we could have very narrow, much more pointed data. We could be more informed. We could see how the end, how our actions affect schools. So there's lots of things that it could do, and it could eliminate those school reports. It could eliminate the data bites, and we could get more in-depth data than we even have now. And we would all get a report from the school's data, and there would be two. So that's a really general. We can go into depth in this a little bit more, but what drove the need of this coming up was it would eliminate like 3 reports in a month at least that we could even get better data. So that would make it shorter and allow us to have more time to do some of these other things. And it was very favorably received by the staff, because I think it would be a win-win situation. Something we'll discuss later in depth, but something that could help this be more successful, this new agenda.
So if this new organization is voted in, when will this start to be implemented?
It's a great question.
This year?
Maybe next meeting. I think we have the flexibility to do this when we want. It's just a regular board meeting. The agenda I think we can structure how we want it.
You would need to take a formal vote on establishing or changing the order of business.
Okay.
So that would be, if this was something that you wanted to do, we'd bring it to you as an action item at the next meeting.
Okay. So we're going to have one more meeting at least like this.
That's a question I have. So when you look at the policy 1400, it says that the board will follow Robert's Rules of Order unless they take a formal vote. And so, like, I'll use one example, like approval of minutes. If you go read that, it usually says approval of minutes is up front. So our current agenda, I think, kind of follows normal business for Robert Rules of Order. If we were to, and I have no problem with this, I think it's fine. If we were to adopt it, how do we record that other than for future boards? You know, because right now we're just following Robert's rules. Now we're going to have a policy that says you follow Robert's rules unless you take a vote. Now, how do you document that this is our new order?
So you would still be following all of the other rules within Robert's rules, the way that you make motions and take action, et cetera. Really, the only thing that you'd be doing would be changing your order of business. And so the action item would simply reflect that you've taken action on
How do we
that
know?
specifically.
It's just a general question. How as a board, I don't know that any other board has ever taken action to change the order of the agenda. I'm just going based on when we've said it in the past, Robert Rule of Order, and that's kind of the layout. Like, we're taking action, so if we're changing something, shouldn't we be documenting it somewhere
So
other than
to
in meeting
record it
notes?
for, I apologize for interrupting you, Mr. Lerman. To record it for future boards, you do it by resolution.
Okay.
And it would be indexed.
And no one's ever changed it from Robert Rule of Order in general in the past? No other boards that we have record of?
Not in the time that I've been here, since 2002, to my knowledge, but we can take a look at that research if you want us to do it.
I have no issue with the changing the order up.
Yeah, I'm wondering how strict we need to be in that order, because I mean, I'm perfectly fine putting approval of minutes up with agenda review, but it doesn't take very long.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if we're going to talk about this more later, but, this idea of, we have the business, and I get that this is an important business meeting, but this other aspect of our primary role is to represent the community and be this. And so I honestly think that many boards don't do as well as we do as seeking involvement and input, and I like that. And just because it's not done commonly doesn't mean that it's the right thing that they're doing. Like we have our student board representatives, and their input is invaluable, but that's not something that the majority of school boards do, I don't think. And so some of those things, like I'm fine following standard protocols, but I think we can be a little rogue on some things because I think it's better, makes us a better board, even though it's a little bit astray from the standard historical way boards operate.
So
we can always pass a resolution to undo our last resolution if this doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things we will have to be careful of and cognizant of is that we list things, we identify ahead of time what we're going to talk about and make sure we list those on the agenda. And because I do think that is one of the requirements, is we let people know what we will be discussing. So I don't think we can go completely, what do you want to talk about tonight type of thing. So.
Which is great, because like when you're doing this and you want to talk about schools, we can put that on the agenda. Instead of people having to come for the whole meeting, they can come for just that report. Because it'll be after it, it'll be at the end, and I think it'll work. I think it might be better for our community.
Mrs. Lankin, do you have any thoughts?
Well, it just seems to me that, we were talking about people coming and staying for the whole meeting. That's what you were talking about. So it seems like the action items should be closer to the beginning of the program.
I would like to put it all within the first 15 minutes.
But how many of the community care about the future agenda items? That's why, I know it doesn't take much time, but it seems like the action items.
And how many care about our communications?
I agree.
Yeah, and I don't care about the communications either. I think
How come you guys are chuckling?
I know.
That's
I think
not
it was
funny.
born because they wanted to see if the board was really involved in the community, and there
Doing
was
it.
lots of questions there. I think we should get rid of
But
that.
I think that the action items, because
Yeah.
that's what the people normally want, or want to have comments about, or want to know what we're doing, or what, it just seems like that should be.
So about the communications, I know I like to talk,
Yeah.
but I want it to be convenient for the audience and the people watching. So on that, I do think communications is important, and maybe important towards the beginning, because again, people want to, our sessions do get long, and people do generally want to, go home to their families after a long day. But we do, the student reps, we say important things like, oh, we have a fundraiser here if you want to donate, be, a good person, and do things like that. And it's just, it makes the audience aware of things that maybe they weren't aware of before, which is important.
Maybe we should leave it for the students. There you go.
Well, I like the communications personally, just because it's very open. Anyone, you don't have to say what you've done. You can share ideas. You can share what Mr. Christensen often shares legislative items where he's representing that. To me, it's an opportunity to be accountable. We're all elected representatives. You can say whatever you want. You can share an idea. You can share an event. You can And that's the same way I feel about audience comments. People have come and they've announced events, they've given feedback, they've given praise, they've given thank you, they've, all kinds of things. And that's why I like that kind of open-ended, this is an opportunity since we can't communicate, where it's not recommended that we communicate via social media or other things that are not, that don't follow records retentions laws. And so anyways, I think that's an invaluable time for us to share whatever we would like to share.
Okay, so I think we'll kind of follow this agenda. I don't know, Mr. Larriman, I mean, if we change some things around, what would we be taking action on? Just kind of adjusting or making a flexible agenda that generally follows an outline?
I'm just reading the policy that says the board shall establish its regular order of business, but may elect to change the order by a majority vote of the members. It doesn't feel like we should have to do that. I mean,
yeah.
And I have no problem with leadership doing it, but it's just what we wrote in our policy with president and vice president just setting it differently every week as long as we communicate it. But we have this policy that says we got to take action. So that's just my question is, I have no problem with it as it is or this proposed change. I have no preference to tell you the truth. But if we do take action and change it, how do we document it? And it sounds like with the resolution. So.
And I think we do need a vote. I don't think this is a decision. We were reacting to the needs that came out in that study session, so that we can have more open discussions that are still public, but that we can this can be more of a group effort rather than whatever. Anyway, so that was the whole purpose. And if you, and I think we absolutely should vote on it. If you three don't want to do this, we're both okay with leaving business as business.
And I'm fine either way. I do have a question. I guess I'm sorry if I didn't catch this part. How changing the order encourages more discussion than we already have. I didn't catch that part of the discussion here.
No, so
I was just saying another option would be then just to add this extended study discussion after the reports as an agenda item on all, don't even change the order, just add it, like today it would have been reports and discussion 9D, and just have that always as the last report would be just an opportunity to have some brief discussion.
Because we want to let these poor people go if they want to go. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, the thought, Mr. Larriman, was that we would take care of any business. I mean, this is our formal business meeting, and we just wanted to move the business up front so that we could get that, so that we could get through that. I mean, I personally, if I could, I would just end the meeting there, and then we'd open another, not necessarily business meeting, but another study session where we would talk. But this is kind of where we landed as a compromise, to just take care of business first and then have our reports and discussions after that.
I'm fine with either way.
So, okay. So we've heard from the board. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to weigh in on this subject? I'm not even going to give you a second chance.
Can you just comment on the live streaming? Where are we at with that? I'm just curious.
So Mr. Edinger will be providing an update to the board in terms of cost and what it would take, and then we can bring it back as a report or an action item for the board's consideration.
Okay. All right, no further discussion on that. Thank you. We will move to the consent agenda, where we have personnel, warrants, policy 3111, entrance qualifications, bill of sale, Columbia Basin College, and E-rate wireless upgrade contract. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as amended. Any discussion? I know we don't normally do this, but I had to ask that tonight because I see that, oh my goodness. Mr. Gerard, our kid's favorite elementary school teacher, is retiring this year. I saw that, so I just had to bring that up, but he's done a great job for us.
So in that vein, Jim Brown from Pasco High School, who I believe is the 43 years of experience. He's been #1 on our seniority list since I can ever remember. Well, I think since Marcia Halverson retired. So he's also retiring. So
It's interesting to read through those reports and see the people that are coming and going and the memories. So with that, we will, any other discussion? Can we get a roll call? Mrs. Richardson? Yes.
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 Thank you. Future agenda items.
So we will be having a study session at our next board meeting, and it's a pretty meaty, kind of a weighty topic for the board. Sarah and Susanna will be working together to provide some building capacity data that's part of both the long-term facilities management planning process, but it also informs our capital facilities plan. And our capital facilities plan is the plan that we put on file with the city around impact fees. So it's a pretty meaty study session. I believe we have Denise Stiffarm will be joining us, so we'll have a outside legal counsel here to help answer any of the board's questions and navigate that topic. As far as reports, we do have a social studies curriculum materials review cycle going on right now, and so that group has been meeting, is prepared to provide the board a recommendation in terms of core materials for your consideration. We have a data bite scheduled, and then an opportunity for the board to talk through the pros and cons of the new superintendent evaluation tool and to give feedback, input around potential modifications of the tool and/or process.
Very good, thank you. So that concludes our meeting for tonight. We thank you for attending and sticking it out to the end. And with that, we are adjourned.